Cool.
Which presentation did Sid say we're giving today? The intro
Day
to the
two? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's somewhere on Zoom or on Discord, I mean. Are we missing someone? Or wait, Dan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then he'll probably just catch the video later.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, Sid put quizzes in here. Should we make him do the quiz? I don't think we should make him do the quiz.
Orally. Oh, never mind. What's up, Dan?
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone do anything fun recently?
No, not really.
Daniel, what are you doing on vacation?
Sleeping.
Where are you?
At Norfolk.
Cool.
Sid, do you want us to give the quiz or no?
I think for the most part we were fine. Oh, also, just sign up for the quizzes. For the like open-ended stuff, it tells you that they're wrong, but like most of the times it's not.
Yeah.
Because it like can't do it. I just put like examples. As long as you're kind of close to it, you're fine. Let me pull up that one, see how it was.
What happens if you don't have an impact? You lose. Who responded that? I like that one.
I think that may have been Goomba. He went through the things.
Oh. That's a goal.
That wasn't very cash money of him.
Yes. Okay, does anybody have any questions from it? Okay, cool. Do you want to just start on the flowing and then we'll go into the cross-six activity? So there's in the Rajiva Jackson, either one, you can read it. I wouldn't screen share it yet. It's the flowing practice in nukes. It's in the general debate folder. It's also linked in the presentation. And then
Okay.
just read it.
And have them practice flow?
Yeah. So does everybody have paper and a writing utensil?
Sid, it sounds like you're underwater and being abducted by aliens right now.
I think it's just birds which are outside. I'll move rooms.
Okay. So yeah. Do you want me to read this, Rajiv? Do you want me to send you
Yeah,
the
go
link?
for it.
Okay. If everyone who is going to have paper and pencil or a pen has that, I'm not going to screen share because then you could just copy off the screen.
Also, yeah.
I'm going to
wanna,
go
like as much as possible. We do want to hear and see from you. I guess I don't know if you guys are in a situation where that is permissible, but otherwise, of course,
Where what is what?
If they're in a situation where it's
Saying that if
possible.
you can turn your camera
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Oh, please do.
Yeah. Or at the very least, unmute occasionally, so we don't feel so lonely.
Hey, I've got Rajiv right here. I'll never be lonely. Okay, yeah. So I'm just gonna go straight down. This is probably only gonna take like a minute or two. I'm just gonna go this slower than the speed I would go in LD, but maybe a tiny bit faster than the speed you might go in LD. Okay.
Also, he's not reading a framework, he's just reading one contention.
Yeah, so this is just to practice like cards, warrants, subpoints, that kind of stuff.
And the resolution is states ought to eliminate the nuclear persons.
Okay. Contention 1 is that nukes decrease peace. Subpoint A is that the weapons themselves decrease peace. Nuclear proliferation occurred after World War II because U.S. nuclear arsenal decreased peace. Krieger, 2005. The U.S. use of nukes at the end of the war, when combined with the fact that the U.S. kept the project secret from the Soviet Union, created the fear for Soviet leadership that the U.S. would use its new weapons to dominate them. Driven by fear of U.S. domination, they saw security in the deterrence potential of the weapons. Both Britain and France chose to go nuclear out of fear and a lack of trust in placing their security in the hands of the U.S. China chose also to go nuclear, fearing that without nuclear weapons, its security was threatened by both the U.S. and Soviet Union, and that it would remain subject to their bully potential. Fear and security appeared to be the driving force in China's decision to go nuclear. All of these countries developed nuclear arsenals out of the fear of others' nukes. When there are more nukes, there's more fear. So given that nukes cause proliferation, the increase in fear is exponential. This fear is the cause of war. Glasio 5. The answer isn't always fear. The answer is always fear, plain and simple. We would not kill, attack, maim, or blow up other people if we weren't afraid of them. The root of all war and lack of peace is fear, which is directly caused by nuclear weapons. Subpoint B is that deterrence reduces peace. Nuclear deterrence is the theory that if a country has nuclear, it will deter nuclear strikes from other countries. Deterrence only prevents nuclear war. Barash 18. Nukes have not deterred other forms of war. During the Cold War, each side engaged in conventional warfare, nor have their weapons deterred attacks upon nuclear-armed states by non-nuclear opponents. As the Korean War's tide was shifting against the North, U.S. nukes did not inhibit China from sending soldiers, resulting in the stalemate on the Korean Peninsula, and has resulted in the world's most dangerous unresolved standoffs. Conventionally armed Iraq was not deterred from lobbing Scud missiles at nuclear-armed Israel, which could have used its nuclear weapons. U.S. nuclear weapons did not deter the terrorist attacks on the 11th of September. The arsenals of UK and France have not prevented repeated terrorist attacks. Therefore, nukes prevent a problem that they create. However, deterrence is based around fear, which, as said in my Glasio 5 card, is the cause of war, and it also increases tension, preventing peace. Because nukes cause fear, which decreases peace and causes war, as long as they exist, it will be impossible to achieve the future desired by transformational pacifism. So I urge an affirmative ballot. Okay, I'm going to screen share it now so you can all look at what the document actually was and see how much of it you think you got written down.
Wait, actually, how about we try something else? Why don't we have everybody, they can ask if they missed something, like if they think they missed something, they can ask it, and then we'll try doing a practice cross-ex, and then we'll show it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Does anyone who was flowing think they missed something?
The tag on the fear causes war card.
Basically, is there a brave soul who wants to do a 1 minute cross-ex where they ask a mix of clarifying and strategic questions against this affirmative contention?
Also, Silas, I'm not entirely sure why, but whenever you speak, it's slowed down and robotic. It's pretty hard to understand. So if you have something, I think typing it out would honestly be way easier for all of us to understand.
It's like Prado's drunk mind.
Yeah, it is exactly like Prado's drunk mind.
Oh, okay. Emily. Ooh, you're gonna do a 1 minute cross-ex of this, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
It's mean to Emily, but okay.
If you
All
just
right.
first one on the screen, wait, let me pull up the timer. Okay. Ready and go.
All right, so you were stating that nuclear weapons cause fear and proliferation among other countries. How can you prove that nuclear weapons cause fear? Like, I know that it can cause proliferation, but how can you connect that to fear?
Right, so that's what the Glasio 5 evidence is attempting to prove to you, which is that the reason we acquire weapons for any reason is because we're afraid of other people. So what nuclear weapons allow us to do is essentially justify fear of other people because we're manufacturing weapons to destroy them.
Okay, but how impactful is that fear? How much does it really matter in people's lives? Like, what is the impact of that fear?
The impact of that fear is, again, through the Glasgow 5 evidence, which says that fear is the root cause of war. So if we're afraid of more people and securitizing ourselves against them, we're going to find ourselves in more armed conflicts with those people we've convinced ourselves we should be afraid of.
Okay,
Cool.
Good job.
I like that.
thanks.
I might hijack the screen share real quick so I can. I was flowing on my laptop, and I used a little bit less shorthand than I might if I were flowing on paper because I'm typing and that's faster than
Do
writing.
you want to try having somebody else do one also, just to get more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be difficult for them to share if they float on paper, but yeah. Oh, you mean do a cross-X? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Raj, do you want to try it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Pull up the timer.
yeah.
Okay, Praj, starting in 3, 2, 1.
So, first off, what would be your warrant for saying that more nukes equals more fear?
So the reason that more nukes equals more fear is because as soon as one country acquires nuclear weapons, every other country that doesn't have them is afraid. So like by inherently being afraid of other countries having a technology you don't, this causes a proliferation of fear, which causes a proliferation of nukes and a proliferation of war.
Okay, so basically, if you have nukes, you're afraid, or are you more aggressive in saying that you're the stronger power in the world?
When you have nukes, you make other people afraid. And then that's going to cause them to act in a way that they're afraid of you. And then that's going to cause war.
Okay, so in like human life, you would say that nukes would cause fear. Is that correct?
Yes.
Like people being afraid of being nuked, right?
People afraid of others having nukes.
Okay, all right.
Cool.
Hold on, I got a Discord call in the middle of that.
Power through. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, do you guys want to check out my flow now?
Sure.
Okay, sure. So yeah, here we are. Maybe I should zoom a little bit. So one thing is that, yeah, spacing is important. Also important is the making sure that you have each like header correct. So that's like the names of contentions and subpoints, etc. So you know what they're saying. So yeah, I mean, this is just an organizational system that I use, but I write the tag on the card, then I leave a lot of space. Then the impact here I flowed was just that fear causes war. Then on the other subpoint, I flowed the first card. Then Glassy was cross-applied, so that's my symbol for that, XA, and then that deterrence thus leads to nuclear war because it causes fear, and then impact is that it makes peace. So that's how I flowed it. I tried to include enough so that I would know what each argument was, which is probably going to be different for each person. But I also tried to use, abbreviations and shorthand so that I wasn't spending too much time on it. Cool.
Okay, how about those of you which have cameras, show your flows up to the camera as best as you can. And then we'll just like cycle through and because I think if you go into speaker mode and then the person who's showing the flow, if you just talk, then your flow will be big on the screen.
Yeah.
So Praj.
You want to say something, Praj?
Oh yeah, I didn't realize what was going on because I was trying to get my pencil and I had to go do something for a second, so I didn't get like the first thing.
Yeah.
I just had the whatever the writer, and I was probably, if I wasn't around, I would re-ask the tag of the evidence.
Yeah,
but-
no worries. I might have used a little more spacing, but otherwise
Yeah.
it looks good.
I mean, it's LD.
Yeah, but still, good
True.
habits die hard. As
Cool.
do bad. All right, good job, Prash. Anyone else?
Yeah, I missed the. Go ahead.
I think Silas is having some technical problems right now, so why don't you, Emily, you show yours right now?
Yeah, I also missed the first part, so it was really like cramped and not great writing, but here. Yeah, the
Cool.
spacing was awful. I'll
No,
admit
it's
that.
good. Yeah, I don't know, Jackson. What do you think?
I think it looks like content works well. Sid, Anthony says to move him into the LD breakout room.
Yeah, I know he left.
Oh,
Man's is
Sid
just a
says-
mascot. But yeah, Emily, I would just, in addition to using like spacing and maybe a bit more abbreviation, I would try to make the columns smaller because there are 5 speeches and you want it to fit on one.
Yeah.
So yeah. But otherwise looks good. All right, cool. Silas, you doing better?
Do I sound normal?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Not
okay.
drunk.
Yeah, I think it's probably the Chromebook.
I see. All right.
Yash, did you have a flow? Okay, I'm going to go and talk to Anthony. I'll be back.
He wants to
Okay.
be moved into the LD room.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, cool. So, yeah, I mean, if hopefully you have some idea of what a flow is supposed to look like. If you specifically want us to look at your flow, we don't even need to look at it now. You can even just like, send us a message or something on Discord, or like even here. But yeah, I guess if does anyone have any like questions, any concerns?
What is your background?
It's cactus juice.
Yeah, cactus juice. Yeah.
I'm off to cactus juice today, actually.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I know. So okay, we're okay. Yeah, Jackson, if you want to pull up the presentation, we can just continue from there.
Awesome. Sounds good. Let me check. People see that? Yes. Yes.
Yep. Yeah. I saw it.
Okay. Okay. Argument mapping. So this is kind of what Rajiv and I were talking about yesterday with regards to like strategy stuff, which is that you can't go into every round and expect to be doing the same thing. A lot of debate is like not just thinking on your feet about what you're going to say, but thinking about on your feet about what's the best thing for me to say. You're always going to have multiple options, and having to plan out your strategy ahead of time. Not really ahead of time, but just like in the round before of like the time that you're executing it is really important. 1 second, just got a Discord message. Oh, it's just Anthony. Thank you, Anthony.
Nice.
Lots of profanity. Awesome. So yeah, planning out like the arguments you're going to go for. So if you hear someone, like let's say you're AF, right? And in the 1NC, you're hearing what they're saying, like in response to your case, being able to multitask and be like, okay, I'm going to be writing down what they say, but at the same time, I'm going to be looking through my back files for cards to use in the 1AR or something. Because like they've already touched on my case now, they've already touched on their case. Now they're going on to mine. While I'm writing down responses to mine, I can also be looking at cards to respond to like their framework or their contentions.
Yeah.
And being able to think about, oh, what arguments am I going to want to make instead of just copy pasting everything in your back file is important. You have to be able to pick and choose. And you make sure like it forms a coherent narrative as to why your opponent is wrong.
Yeah.
What
I think
is
this is a. Here,
Oh,
yeah,
I was
this is-
talking about argument mapping in the sense of this.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is an interesting way, And I think probably a good way to understand the way that internal links function within debate. So this is from a resolution about eliminating subsidies for fossil fuels, which means basically we just like stop, giving massive amounts of money to fossil fuel companies so that the price of fossil fuels stays low. And so an AF argument might be about climate change, right? And how that terminalizes to an extinction impact. But to win that argument, you can see that there are sort of several internal links so that we can get from, eliminating subsidies being true and how that eventually results in reducing the chance of extinction being true. So first, we would need to prove, as is shown in this example, that eliminating subsidies would lead to a decrease in the use of fossil fuels. The warrant for that would be that the prices would be slightly higher. Then less fossil fuel use would lead to decreased emissions of carbon dioxide. And so that would be an argument we would have to make and prove, but it seems also pretty straightforward. Then we would need to prove that a decrease in carbon dioxide emissions would prevent climate change. And then finally, we would need to win that preventing climate change reduce the chance of extinction. So if when you're especially when you're flowing, I think, if you flow all of these parts of the argument, you'll see if, you're the debater who's going for that argument, that you need to win all of those to win any risk basically of, accessing that contention as a reason to vote for you. Whereas if you're the team who's debating against it, right, and you're trying to determine which is the weakest part of this argument, which you say that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? So something like the same idea would probably be true for an internal link chain. So it might be harder to argue that fossil fuel use does not correlate with carbon dioxide emissions, but it might be easier to argue that eliminating subsidies won't create any major changes in the use of fossil fuels. So for each of those, you would just want to pick, I would say, the part of the argument that makes the most sense to attack, and that you have the warranting and the evidence to beat back. It provides, if you map your arguments out this way, it'll always provide you with some sort of argumentative ground against your opponent's argument. You just have to pick and choose what you think the strongest is.
Yeah. For instance, last year, Rajiv and I, for part of the year, read, I guess it was 2 years ago now, 2 seasons ago, we read an affirmative that had to deal with climate change. And if a team got up and was like, okay, we have a limited amount of time, we're going to spend our time, which is kind of the currency in which debate is traded, on reading cards that climate change isn't real. That was like, we'd laugh at them because that's stupid, right? Most judges just have some inherent knowledge that climate change is real, and the evidence saying that climate change is real is much stronger. So those teams made a strategic error in going to attack that part of our case instead of something that's easier to attack, like, oh, climate change actually won't kill every single human on Earth, right? It's not going to cause extinction, as opposed to saying climate change just doesn't exist.
Yep.
So seeing how these arguments are mapping, weakest link in the chain, what Rajiv said, that's all important.
Yeah.
Also, this is not something you do in round. This is something you do when you're I always do this when I'm planning my cases out, because it also helps you figure out what evidence do you need, which parts are the more weaker parts. So you shouldn't be doing this in round because it takes too much time. But you can do it in your head, kind of.
Yeah, right. And having an intuitive understanding of what the internal links are will help you formulate, I think, responses in a more coherent way. Since you understand, what they need to win, all the steps that they need to do, whether, aside from whether or not you're actually documenting it, it'll help you think of responses if you know exactly what they have to prove. But yeah, I mean, here is a much longer, wait, is this all one internal link chain, Sid, or is this multiple?
Yeah, it's one. It was we shouldn't have run that argument. It was too confusing.
Yeah, so here you can see this is an argument which might also be true in some way, but it's a less defensible position in debate because its internal link chain is longer. And so because of conjunctive probability, which basically just means what is the probability of X and Y and Z, right? Each time we add a new event, it decreases the probability that the whole thing is true. Even if there's a 90% chance that each of 5 things is true, it's still going to be like, a 50 to 60% chance that the whole thing is true, even if each thing is like strong. But yeah, so you can see that there would be a lot of ways to argue against this, because for the negative to win, again, any risk of this argument, they would have to win that eliminating subsidies leads to an increase of like domestic fossil fuel production, a decrease in domestic fossil fuel production. Based on some sort of like industry or like, I don't know, market's internal link. And then if there were less fossil fuel production within the US, there would be a supply vacuum. And if that were true, then other countries would increase the amount of oil they produce, specifically Saudi Arabia. And if they did that, then we'd have to buy more oil from them. And if we bought more oil from them, then they would have more money from oil. And if they did that, then they would become more emboldened. And if they became more emboldened, then the people who run the Saudi Arabian government would become more autocratic. They would move more further away from democracy. So it's sort of, I don't know if you guys know the book, like If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. At some point it starts to become like that, which is why typically tighter arguments have less argumentative ground against them.
For what it's worth, a lot of times this is kind of in how you present your arguments. Like if you manage to do that entire argument in like 3 cards, right? You're like, oh, one card says subsidies lead to the industry decreases, which decreases production, which leads to a vacuum. And then that vacuum will lead to increase in other countries, particularly Saudi. And then you could be like, more Saudi oil money leads to autocracy and less democracy. If you kind of frame that as like 3 arguments as opposed to like 10, right? It's going to seem on face like more true. But if you need a new author or a new line of reasoning for every single step, then your opponent's going to be like, what the heck is this? Like, this is so highly improbable. So yeah, it's about how you frame your argument.
Also, I mean, that's probably just true because, these debates are occurring within, academia and, within like think tanks and stuff like that. So if an author agrees with, your full claim, they've probably written a whole article supporting your full claim, right? So you could keep that within one card. And also, even if your opponent presents their argument as something that's very short, if you recognize sort of the internal vulnerabilities of it and what they have to win to actually win each card, then that can also help you understand, like, how I can make responses to something that appears, difficult to beat or difficult to respond to. Which assumptions of theirs should I question? Because there are a lot of assumptions that go into these very, grand claims.
Okay, next slide. Oh, Rajiv's favorite.
Yeah.
Offense and defense.
Should we maybe take a break before we start?
Do people?
Okay. Because the next stuff is like stuff.
Yeah. All right. So you guys can take a break for a few minutes. Get up. Like stretch. Get some water. Tend to your personal wellness.
Rajiv, you can just pause the recording right now.
Yeah, I got you.
It's kind of sad.
Yeah. That was kind of important.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Just say it all again.
Yeah. I'll give the Cliff Notes version. Offense is a reason to vote for you. It fulfills your resolutional burden, and you need offense to win the debate. Any offensive argument has to necessarily prove that the resolution is good or true if you're on the affirmative, or that the resolution is bad or false if you're on the negative. On the other hand, a defensive argument simply reduces the importance or the risk of another argument, of an offensive argument of your opponent mattering within the debate. So you can do that by either saying that their argument is unimportant or that it is improbable or untrue. That would sort of, it doesn't provide a reason to vote for you. It simply reduces, the ability of your opponent to win on that piece of offense. And at the end of the debate, normally the judge compares the offense of both teams to decide who's won the debate. So defense can help reduce the amount of offense that your opponent has access to. A simple example would be if the affirmative said, nuclear weapons increase the probability of war on a nuclear arsenal abolition topic. And so if the negative were to respond by saying nuclear weapons do not have any effect on the probability of war, that would be a defensive argument, since it would simply disprove the affirmative's argument without being a reason to vote for the negative. The negative would need to prove nuclear weapons are good for some other reason. But if the negative took that argument and turned it on its head by saying that, nuclear weapons actually decrease the probability of war, then they would be taking their opponent's argument and turning it into a reason to vote for them. And so that would be offense. And an offensive response to any argument is called a turn. And these are important to understand within debate because defensive arguments, they're helpful. They help you in the debate. They help you, reduce the number of points, proverbially, that your opponent can score. But if you want to win the game, you need to score points. And you score points by proving your resolutional burden, by extending offensive arguments, and by preventing your opponent, when possible, from, having clean access to their own offensive arguments.
I know it can seem a bit contrived, but I think you can kind of expand upon the points analogy, which like, let's say the affirmatives arguments, their offense nets them 10 points. A defensive argument is a multiplicative effect. So we can reduce that by half, or we can reduce those points by a tenth. But the maximum you're ever going to get to is reducing that to 0. But what you really want to do is move that into negative points, because that's what makes the negative win. So something like a turn, an offensive turn, might multiply by -1, and now they're net negative 10 points in the round.
And no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say we're gonna get more into turns and stuff and responses next week, so don't worry anything about that. Just worry about offense and defense.
Yep. And basically, I mean, like Jackson said, you can't I think that debaters, especially when they're responding to arguments, have a tendency to be overly defensive. And obviously, if there's no basis for offense, there's no warrant for why you could have offense on a particular contention, then don't read offensive responses. But mixing offense in with defense can make it really difficult for the affirmative, or for the other side to extend whatever argument they're making, because they have to handle a lot of tricky and layered responses within the realm of the flow, I guess. Does anyone have any?
I was going. Okay.
No. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
First, does anybody have any questions? And I was going to say something. Okay. Let's see. Yash, are your contentions that you read in case, are those offense or defense?
That's a good question.
Repeat. I can't hear you.
Oh, so do you remember what contentions are in your case that you read?
No.
Okay, so remember you have your case, which you read in your first speech. These are your own set of arguments, and these are the key reasons you give, why your side is good. So are those offense or are they defense?
Offense?
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Because they give a reason that you should win the debate. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Who else has
Go to the next slide.
Jackson, skip the next slide and come back to it. Because the next slide has just examples on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Practice.
Check speaker notes.
Jackson, don't go into the speaker notes because it has the answers in there, but Rajiv.
Yeah, I got
it.
it.
Off the stuff in there, yeah.
Okay, so Rajiv will give it. I'll just show this.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And yeah, I don't know. These will be open questions, but I want everyone to participate, whether through chat or saying things. But if you want, there is the raise hand function. So if you open your participants menu, you should have the opportunity to raise your hand, or maybe not. I don't know. It's not an option on my menu. But anyway, let's hope that everyone gets to participate.
I think that's a Microsoft Teams thing, not a Zoom thing.
No, it's under reactions. It's the left-hand thing.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, yeah. So maybe we'll just rotate through people. But yeah, okay. So I'll give you an example, and you guys try to tell me if it's offense or defense. So they claim that voting AF causes more conflict, but their warranting is flawed because it relies on false theories of power. I can say it again. They claim that voting AF causes more conflict, but their warranting is flawed because it relies on false theories of power. So I will cold call if no one takes a stab.
Ooh.
That would be defense.
Yep, that's right. Defense. Because, or why is it defense?
Because you're just saying that they're wrong and you're not really giving any reasons that you're right.
Yeah. Or that specifically that the resolution would be bad in that case. But yeah. Okay, cool. So here's another example. By voting for the other side, you end up causing a nuclear war.
My bad.
Any takers?
Defense?
Silas, you unmuted. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say it's offense.
All right. Why is Silas right? You gotta tell us, Silas. Why?
Because you're saying why if you vote for them, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. So if you're saying that, like them causing nuclear war is probably a good reason to vote for you, right? So yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, remember, offense is any reason to vote for you, regardless of like where it comes from, whether the other side like would cause something bad, whether your side would cause something good, right? Those are probably the same thing, but yeah, any reason to vote for you, offense. Okay, here's another example. Their claims that we cause an economic recession are false because we're already in one.
Defense.
Yeah, that's right, Praj. Specifically, if you could tell me from like a Disad Dan type perspective what that argument
Ooh.
is, I'd be really impressed.
Come on, Praj.
Oh gosh, that was a while back.
So say the Disad is about an economic recession, right? And they say we are already in an economic recession.
The person's already falling whenever off of the cliff.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. But what's that?
What is the word for that other than like falling off the cliff?
Not unique.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I just
right.
remembered that.
It's non-uniqueness, and to basically unpack that term for those of you who may not be familiar with it, they're saying that the argument isn't unique because it would happen in either world, right? So if we're already in an economic recession, then if you vote affirmative or if you vote negative, it won't really matter. It won't have any effect on whether there's an economic recession or not. So while the argument might be true, it's not unique. It's the same for both sides.
Also, Daniel and Yash, don't worry about like we're going to go more in depth into all this stuff next week.
Yeah,
So
for sure,
don't
for
worry
sure.
about it. Yeah.
And it takes time. Anyway, this is another example. Their argument is wrong because it relies on outdated evidence.
It's defense.
Yep, correct. Because you're just saying their argument is wrong. You're not saying that's a reason to vote for you, right? If you were only to claim in the round, that's a good litmus test for if something is defense or offense. If it were the only argument in the round, would you win? So if your only argument in the round was they're wrong, you're not going to win, right? You need, the next one, their claims about the effects of nuclear war are severely overblown. So basically, the argument would be saying that they have claimed a certain, like, that the effects of nuclear war are high, but we're saying they're not that bad.
Anthony, you want to take this one?
Anthony already did
What?
mine.
Huh? I'm not paying attention. What'd you ask?
It's fine. Wait, someone who was paying attention, if you would like to take a stab, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Daniel, why don't you try it?
Yeah.
Can you repeat it again?
Yeah. So their claims about the effects of nuclear war are severely overblown. Basically, they say that the impacts to a nuclear war would be really bad. We're saying they wouldn't be that bad.
Defense?
Yeah, that's defense. Because, mitigates.
Yeah, I'm not completely clueless.
Hooray.
Rajiv, where were you when like I was a freshman? Why couldn't you have explained it like this then? This is like
Well, because,
Simple.
it takes time to understand how to explain something in addition to how to understand it yourself. All right. Here's one. If you vote for them, the other side, you cause the conflict in the Middle East to escalate further.
Well, that depends on what the resolution is, though. So if it's like
I
about
mean-
the Middle East,
So say the resolution, even if the resolution was about Russia, right, it would probably be bad if the impact in the Middle East, or if the conflict in the Middle East escalated, right?
so that'd be offense.
Yeah. So I would say that that's normally always an offensive statement, unless it's like some dumb PF resolution with an impact filter within the resolution itself, where it's like impacts to educational quality. But typically LD resolutions are just very broadly about morality. So yeah, in most cases that would be offense. So you are correct.
Also,
Go ahead.
even if Middle East conflict escalating was good, that would still be offense.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's still reason to vote for you. So
Yeah.
even if there's a good side about you, that can still be offense, just like in your contentions.
Yeah. Like here's the thing. The last one actually. Last example. So voting for us is the only way to create economic growth.
Anthony.
Or wait, Daniel, you unmuted. I'd like to
I think I'd like to hear Anthony answer first.
Yeah, no. I think
I think Daniel should go.
Anthony is texting me that he's ready to answer.
What? I never texted Jackson. What are you
Anthony's
talking
the
about?
mascot. We don't want to hear from him right now.
I don't know what you mean. I'm texting
Anthony,
you,
ready?
Jackson.
Ready?
Such
I
a
got
lie.
this one. Bet.
Such a
I'm
lie.
prepping. I'm listening.
Such a lie.
Don't
man.
call
You're
me out.
Such
I'll
a
get
liar.
nervous.
This is not true. I'm on
Yeah.
Reddit. How could I be texting you?
How do you take a screenshot on an iPhone?
Anyway,
All right, repeat it. I got this.
Wait, let's
Say it again.
Go ahead.
Sure. So voting for us is the only way to create economic growth. Sid, how you had it was fine too. But yeah,
What?
it was fine either way.
Oh, okay.
Come on, Anthony. You said you're ready. You got this next one.
Yeah, I have no idea.
If anybody can get this, you're better than our senior LD.
Yeah. Especially Yush, if you get
Hold
this.
on. Say it one
you
more
were-
time.
you
Say it
were-
one more time. Say it one more time.
Wait, no, Yash.
Yeah, wait. No, I'll give Yush the first right of response if he's interested. I'll wait.
Yash, are you there?
I will wait 7 seconds.
I'm glad I'm just as clueless as Yash. I'm not the only
Whoa,
one.
you don't know that. All right. I've waited 7 seconds. You can try if you want, Anthony.
Can you say it again?
Yeah. Voting for us is the only way to create economic growth. I will like if anyone just wants to shout out
It's
the answer.
50-50, Anthony.
Yeah.
Offense.
Offense? Yeah.
Good job.
Why?
Because it's a reason to vote for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Like that was like very straightforward. I
Repeats
thought.
definition of offense. Good job.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
nervous, man. I'm nervous.
But yeah, those are sort of the like small examples of
Awesome.
offense and deep,
Easy.
like small, particular responses which can be construed as offense and defense. But there are also sort of like big picture things which can be like offensive or defensive in nature. But you just apply the same rule, right? Like your contentions will be offense because, they're a reason to vote for you, right? And then, specific arguments within your contentions can also be offensive and defensive.
Yeah, good job,
But anyway,
everyone.
should we go back to the previous slide, Sid?
It's the next slide now. It's just
Okay.
terminal versus mitigatory.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty straightforward distinction. So terminal defense is basically, well, the way that I understand it is that it reduces the risk of an argument to 0. So this can be accomplished in a number of ways. But like the primary way to do it is prove that like just their premise is incorrect. And so like, yeah, the way that Sid phrased it was proving a flaw in the argumentation itself. Whereas mitigatory defense, the word mitigate means to like reduce, right, but not eliminate. So if defense is mitigatory, it proves that their argument is unlikely or improbable for some reason. A lot of authors, when they write those types of cards, will make the claim that, oh, it is impossible, but there is always probably some risk if you make that sort of argument. Like if you say, oh, the chance of a terrorist attack is like really, really, really low, there's still some risk. So that, you know, the offense that could come from it still exists, whereas terminal defense literally reduces their argument to absolute nothingness, like has no value. And yeah, it's called terminal because, you know, it like terminal, it like ends it. It's like to its end, to zero.
But it's important to remember that terminal defense is still defense and not offense. Round like freaking 5 of SDI camp tournament
Yeah.
against
For sure.
Tommy and Jason.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, like you need, and oftentimes like debaters think that they have fulfilled their obligation once they've completely disproved their opponent's arguments, right? Which, like, if you have terminal defense against all of their arguments, that means you've caused them to score 0 points, which is like, it should be really easy to win. You could just score 1 point and win. But if you spend the whole time proving that they have no points, you're not going to have any points yourself. And then the judge, I don't know, they might just vote for the other team because it's fun, or like flip a coin or something. If you both have 0 points. Sometimes they'll vote neg.
Oh yeah, we can do practice with this using just like the defense things.
Wait, sorry, what?
Just like what we just did with offense.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's good.
I just
I
also
can
put it in there whether they're terminal or mitigatory.
Yeah. Do you want to here? I can like come up with examples, and if you want to add them to the speaker notes, Sid.
Yeah.
Okay. So say that a response is made. They say that okay. They say that that the resolution causes a war between the U.S. and China, but trade relations mean that a war between the two countries is unlikely.
That would be mitigatory because they said it's not likely.
Yeah, that's right. It can never really reduce the risk to 0, but it it like reduces it somewhat. Okay, suppose that you say okay. They say that an increase in spending leads to an economic decline, but the resolution does not mandate any increase in spending.
Be terminal.
Yep, because like, you know, reduce it to 0. Like if the resolution doesn't cause that, then obviously you're not going to get any offense from it, and it's therefore a good response. Okay. How about okay. Yeah. So suppose that the negative said that doing the resolution would cause growth to go below 2%, which would cause a war between the United States and Russia. And the affirmative said that growth is already at 1%. This is a more difficult one.
I would say that the affirmative's point would be a mitigatory defense.
Why would it be a mitigatory defense?
Because they said that the neg had the argument saying that it would increase to 2%, but they're saying it's not likely because.
Well, no. What the neg was saying was that if you do the AF, growth will drop below 2%, and then the neg said if growth drops below 2%, there will be a war. And then the AF said growth is already below 2%.
Oh, then that's just saying that that would be a terminal defense.
Yeah, I think the way that the argument is phrased, it's designed to be terminal defense. A lot of times, like the negative won't say like, oh, like you have to cross this particular threshold. They'll just be like, the less growth there is, the more probability of war there is. But if they establish a very clear threshold like that, where it's just on off, then proving that they're already past that threshold can sometimes be terminal defense. At
Okay.
least the way
Yeah.
that I view it.
A lot of debate is going to be about those kind of thresholds or like, shoot, what do they call it? Like lines,
Like bright
something
lines?
Bright lines.
bright lines. Yeah, bright lines. Where it's like, are we like really close to it? Like if we like spill over this edge, is like a waterfall and everything comes crashing down. And you know, a lot of your debates will center around where certain bright lines are, what it takes to pass them, whether or not we've already passed them. And right now we know that these drills might seem, you know, relatively easy in the abstract to say, oh, this is defense or this is offense or migratory defense and terminal defense. In a round, when you have like more than one argument and you have to think on the fly, it can get a lot more confusing. So doing these drills now is definitely going to help you. In round, when you're, you know, scrambling to do many things at once, just having a solid like basis of what these arguments are can be really helpful when deciding how to answer them.
Also,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No.
Okay. So like bright lines in LD also sometimes don't happen a lot if you do like fill debate. Because like, what's the bright line on racism? Like, that's like, like things like that are really hard to establish bright lines on. So you have to identify when bright lines are important, when they aren't. And then also note in LD most of the time, like you don't want to say like in a round, especially from like a parent, be like, oh, this is terminal defense, and be like, I win, because so like what we're really trying to teach is like understanding these concepts, then how to apply them in like a normal speed.
Yeah.
Because if you understand like these words, it can just help you process and organize your speeches so they're more
Right.
persuasive and better.
It can also help you realize your mistakes and realize how to grow from them. Like say you like went for your first contention, but you dropped terminal defense against it. Like, you know, don't do that in the future. Like if you want to go for it, don't drop terminal defense. And so like it's a good way to organize like how we know, or how you know, I guess more importantly, what you know you did wrong and like how you can improve. And that's often important.
Yeah, once I learned offense versus defense, I realized I was using way too much defense. I started doing a lot better.
Yeah. Debaters for some reason just like they're contrarians, right? So they like to say like you're wrong more than
Yeah.
they like to say. Yeah.
I read an article about it, about like the problem with like the offense defense lens, and it was talking about how like in normal life we just naturally respond. Like if somebody says like, oh, you like are racist, your natural response is to say like, I'm not. It's not
Yeah.
to say
Not like you're racist.
yeah.
Or racism, good.
Yeah, like defense is just like more natural for us to respond. So it just requires time to get
Yeah,
used
yeah.
to offense, defense.
No, you have to overcome some psychological barriers,
Yeah.
for sure. But
Yeah.
it does make you more persuasive, I think.
Yeah.
I am racist.
Okay. Yeah.
This is recorded, Anthony.
Okay, wait.
I'm not racist.
I'm not racist.
Okay.
Wait,
Not
are we doing weighing now?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I would like to do some sort of drill with this if possible.
when is the weighing tournament, Sid? Thursday?
It's going to be first thing tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that can be the drill, I guess.
Yeah. If this is going to be our last activity, maybe we should take
a small
a
break?
short break. We've been talking
Yeah.
for around 30 minutes. So yeah, if you guys want to, you know, walk around, do the same things as last time, make sure that, you know, you're doing some self-care, go for it. I'll probably just be sitting here if any of you want to talk to me.
you back?
Yeah.
Yash, are you back?
Praj, good having your background.
Yes.
Wow, congratulations. You
Okay, cool.
finally made it.
Okay, everybody's.
Oh, bring
yeah.
back the other Praj.
Before we start, who remembers what an impact? Daniel or Yash, do you remember what an impact is?
No.
Yash, do you remember? You got it right on the quiz. You got the question, so
The final one?
yeah.
Like the last thing in the debate? The thing that makes people like care about or something? Is that the one?
Yeah.
I need to go eat, so I'm just gonna go AFK.
All right, peace. Yeah. So an impact answers the question, why do I care? So yeah, that's entirely correct. Yep. Anyway, so yeah, weighing. I guess we should talk about. Weighing is comparison between two impacts. So as Yash said, an impact is a reason that you care about something. So the neg might be like you should care about economic decline, and the af might be like, well, you should care about terrorism. And so like it's basically answers the question. Impact calculus does like which one should I care about more? And because both sides are probably going to have some impact, some offense, some reason to vote for them, it's very important to show that your reason is more important than their reason. And it's again something that I think that we naturally tend to overlook, but it is something that is definitely more important than you might sort of think at first glance. And particularly within your final speech, your final rebuttal, it is important to make it crystal clear how you outweigh or how your arguments outweigh your opponent's arguments. And so this is something that we'll drill, we'll practice like quite a lot. In LD, I would say there's probably an interesting interaction between weighing and framework, because you sort of have to understand like if their moral theory is true, how does the weighing work? If my moral theory is true, how does the weighing work? How does my moral theory contribute to the way in which I can weigh my impact? But otherwise, I would say that weighing is like something that I think is the fastest way to improve, or the fastest way to differentiate yourself from fellow novices, is to just weigh your arguments in your final few speeches. It'll like help you win the debate.
I remember Mr. Wilson like telling us, like at least I remember two of the things that like make weighing important.
Okay,
Like,
you want to tell us?
there was like time frame and magnitude.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So
we can touch on those a bit later.
Okay.
Yeah, just think about like why. I think that Prajna brings up a good point though. Like, why would you care more about one thing than another? Like naturally. And these responses can be as abstract or as specific as you want them to be, but I do want your input. So like, what is a reason that someone might prefer to care about one problem versus another problem?
Whether it kills or not. How many people does it kill?
Okay.
Unless death is good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a bold assumption.
Wait, then you still care about how many people like you kill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I guess so. So like that's how framework affects weighing.
Yeah. That's actually a really good example.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? What would be a reason to like prioritize one scenario over another scenario?
How likely they are to happen.
Yep. So that would be probability, which was the one out of the three that Praj didn't mention. And then the last one I think is more subtle. So it would be like which one comes first, because we can, the problems that are the most urgent, sometimes we need to solve them first, and we can worry about what happens down the line. So that's an argument sometimes used in debate.
So a lot of times impact calculus or weighing, I'm more used to calling it impact calc, so that's what I'm going to use, in the debate round, is used to compare like impacts to, as you were saying, do not have a clear correlation. Like if I say, oh, you killed 10 people and I only kill 5 people, like obviously if death is bad, then killing 5 people is better. But if you have impact where it's like you could double the economy, but 20,000 people are gonna live like excruciating, like have excruciatingly painful deaths in like Tibet would you double the size of the U.S. economy for that? Like, all of a sudden you have this like, oh, how do I like weigh these things?
Yeah.
And
That's
in
where like
LD
framework comes in. What do you
Yeah.
believe?
Yeah.
in LD, having a framework is important. Like if you value life of all else, then that's important. But maybe like boosting the economy will save more than 20,000 lives. In which case, then you can kind of outweigh on that life claim. So comparing these impacts is important. And a lot of times in LD, you'll have wildly different impacts in your opponent, and you somehow need to say, oh, like the loss of someone's autonomy is worse than the loss of their property or something.
Yeah.
And these like are amorphous impacts. That's where impact comes in to help you.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, Praj used the word framework or like framing, right? So I think impact framing is an important part of impact calculus because it is not enough to simply say like, oh, my impact is more probable, so vote for me, right? Sometimes you need to establish why it matters that something is more probable. And again, this might seem like, super unintuitive, but suppose we're comparing, say, like a 1% risk that every human on Earth dies and there is no future versus a like 90% risk that 100 people die, right? Or that like like even if we're comparing the same impact, we might sometimes have to differentiate based on things like the size of the impact, the probability of the impact. And if I were judging around and one debater came up and said my impact is bigger, vote for me, and the other debater said my impact is more probable, vote for me, I wouldn't really know who to vote for because neither gave me a reason why probability was more important or why like magnitude or the size of the impact was more important. So framing like why those things are important is a really important part of this and something that often gets.
Do you have framing in policy? Or is there because like this like resolution, it's like you're thinking about like is death good or something, death bad?
Yeah, so like oftentimes like framing first of all is an inherent part of any debate event where you're comparing impacts. So you're going to do it just implicitly. But also oftentimes like soft left affirmatives you've probably seen have like framing pages sometimes, like in the 1AC. And so those will be like prioritize high probability impacts. Like, human dignity is a prerequisite to, like looking at whether like loss of life matters, etc. No impact to death.
Also, roll of the ballot on caves are just framing. Like, what should the judge do? And then also, like what we talked about with offense and defense just now, even if you have offense and defense, you should still do weighing, because weighing is the thing that is like even if you lose offense, defense, then you still have the weighing. Weighing is like your safety net.
And also, I mean, one thing you should not muddle the two debates. When you're doing impact calculus, you should assume that they have full access to their impact. Because if your argument for why like their impact is, false is that they don't solve for it or they don't have a link into it, right? Then that means that if you lose either one of those arguments, you lose the debate. If you make them on separate levels, then you have one way of winning, like Sid was saying, just by weighing, even if they win like a good amount of defense against your case. Or you could win by like, proving that your defense against their case is important, like saying that they're improbable or whatever.
And that's a lot of times you use even if statements. So like, even if I lose X argument, I still win because of Y.
Yep.
Because there will very, very rarely be a round in which you just outright win everywhere on the flow. So a lot of the strategies we're talking about are ways that are like helping you have multiple pathways to winning, even if you're not winning every argument. And weighing an impact calculus is probably the most important of those pathways, where you say, even if they win their impact and I win my impact, because oftentimes, both teams will win something. You then have to say, even if we both win our respective arguments, my argument should like be more important than my opponent's.
Yeah.
And that's going to come up in essentially every single round you're ever going to debate.
Yep. And even if you think that you're ahead on every page, oftentimes the judge won't agree. So giving the judge more paths makes them more likely to have a route to voting for you, because sometimes they'll disagree with you.
I think especially with parent and lay judges, weighing is very important because it helps A lot of times, like especially with me at the beginning of this season, last season, I would always be like, "Oh, the judge was just like wrong," but like I just didn't weigh properly and didn't present things like that.
Yeah.
So that's a very important thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
So I have probably kind of mentioned this already. There are really three types of criteria that you can use when weighing impacts: magnitude, probability, and time frame. Magnitude, how big is the impact? Probability, how likely is it to happen outside of the link debate? So obviously, maybe you like say, oh, you read a piece of evidence that says, oh, this thing is unlikely to happen. But as he was saying, you want your weighing to be separate of that. So you want to say, even if like it's something about it is inherently unlikely, not some like piece of evidence or some argument that voting one way won't lead to it, but there's something inherent to the impact itself that's unlikely. Like for example, nuclear war, you could say that like mutually assured destruction means that it's low probability. That's not an analysis about how voting one way leads to nuclear war and that's unlikely. That's just saying the impact itself at like an inherent level is unlikely to happen. And then you have time frame, which is like how fast does it happen. So, you know, if we all grow up in like a mushroom cloud tomorrow that has a sooner time frame than like us all going extinct from climate change. And oftentimes your opponent will be like, oh, my impact is very like high magnitude. And you'll be like, oh, but mine is very probable. So you're going to have to provide an analysis for why the judge prefer high probability impacts over high magnitude impacts. And your opponent is going to, if they're good, is going to say, actually, you should prioritize high magnitude impacts over high probability impacts.
Yeah.
So hammering down on what you're winning and saying, like, at the weighing level, they weigh in this way, and my weighing is better than their weighing is also important.
Yep. Just to cover the other two, like the distinction, these are words which show up less in like policy, but will show up in PF and LD sometimes. So magnitude, I would say, is scope times severity. So scope would just be how many people your impact affects in total, and severity would be how much it affects them. So like this, say like an impact is extinction, right? The extinction of the human race. The scope would be all humans on Earth, and the severity would be death. Whereas like, you know, if that's basically it. And so that's how you determine the magnitude of an impact. This quote unquote size is how badly it affects each person and how many people it affects. Yeah. And also, I mean, Jackson mentioned this, but I think that it's inherently harder to prove a high probability of a high magnitude impact. Like it's probably pretty easy for you to like prove that something might affect like, you know, a small group of people, like 100 people, really, really badly because, you know, they're like, it's very specific, like, you know, say like polygamists in prison, right? Like, you know, that you could, if you let all the polygamists go, they'd all probably be happier. And that would be easier to prove than saying like every single person on Earth would die if China were to launch a nuke at the United States tomorrow. Because, you know, there's sort of like, I don't know, to prove something that's bigger, it takes more work, and therefore it's just sort of normally going to be less probable. But yeah, Jackson, you want to see what's on the next slide?
Next year. Yeah. Okay. So tomorrow, I think along with the PF kits, we're gonna do a weighing drill tournament, and this is something that a lot of like professional and real debate camps do. Not saying we're not professional or real here, but I know both the camps Steve and I went to, and the camp that Sid went to last year. You break up your lab group, and you essentially assign each debater an impact. That's what's gonna happen to all of you tomorrow. So please make sure you have like a mic and stuff because that's going to be important. And essentially, like a tournament style, they're just going to be paired up against someone else. So you might have like alien invasion, and they're going to have like nuclear war with Russia. And you're essentially each going to get like a minute to just be like, why one is a worse impact than the other. And whoever gets to the end wins the tournament.
I think it would, yeah, it would be cool if we could like look at an example, whether that's through student participation or just us talking something through, of like weighing two different impacts.
Let me pull up the Georgetown impact. Yeah, here. Let me screen share this.
Those impacts were kind of whack.
Yeah, but okay. Can people see this window? The word window? Okay.
Global warming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the left, you can see this was a link. This was the list of all of the impacts that were assigned to people in Rajiv Amai's lab last year. So global warming, nuclear proliferation, bioterror, but then you also have like more like tiny, like more obscure things like a cyber war, NATO collapse, free trade agreement, genetic diversity, just like space colonization. So people, you're going to just be assigned a random impact, and even if it's space colonization versus cyber war, you might not immediately be able to think of anything like that. So it's going to hopefully help you think on your feet about like random impacts, because oftentimes debaters are going to read random impacts in the hope that you don't really know how to respond to them, and they can make them seem really bad and scary, and that you're going to be like, well, I don't know anything about cyber terrorism, so I can't effectively respond to that. So having a good diversity of impact is going to be important.
Here's
Is
a
that
Good.
Dropbox?
Yeah.
Okay, what's it
If
called?
you just search impact tournament, it should come up.
Okay, thanks.
So why don't we look at a classic example of maybe two different types of impacts, and let's compare global warming and U.S.-Russia war. So hopefully you all are somewhat familiar with climate change and sort of the problems that it's already causing and is going to cause. And also, hopefully, if you're going to be a debater, you have some ideas of the effects of nuclear war on the planet and, the probability of that. So, yes, Ice Age, correct, Sid. Warming is actually good. Anyway, so who can think of a reason maybe to prefer global warming, or to think that global warming would be a worse impact than a war between the United States and Russia?
Maybe because we'd lose a lot of agricultural production that could cause like a mass famine.
Sure. Okay. I think that is good at proving why global warming is bad, but not why it's worse than a war between U.S. and Russia. So
Well,
like,
maybe like, well,
okay.
like Russia would only bomb like a couple cities or a couple major, I don't know, centers, but global warming would impact everyone, because like there'd be some differences in each people, but it'd be pretty like widespread.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, global warming affects more people. That would specifically be scope under magnitude, right? So I think that's good.
I would say that the probability of global warming is 100% because it's happening now, whereas the probability of a U.S. versus Russia war, it's much less likely. So you could win under the fact that it's more probable that global warming is happening.
Yeah.
Right now.
One thing that I would caution is that it depends on sort of how you're presenting your argument. Because yes, it is 100% likely that global warming will have some effect on the world. But like impact calculus sort of is, when you're looking at probability, you're really saying probability of escalation, probability of it reaching sort of the level that we're talking about. So in this case, it would probably be the probability of global warming causing human extinction, as opposed to the probability of a war between the U.S. and Russia escalating to nuclear use. And I would agree with you that global warming is the more probable impact, but just because it's already happening to some effect doesn't mean that it's quote unquote 100% likely to continue in that direction.
Yeah, especially in an impact calc tournament, and generally just impact when you're in a debate, you're assuming that the impact is going to happen. The probability is like the probability of it reaching a certain magnitude. So if a U.S.-Russia war is like two squadrons like spraying each other with bullets in Afghanistan, and then like a peace treaty is signed, like that's a U.S.-Russia war. But like a nuclear war is very different from that. So you're talking about the probability of escalation. Same with global warming. If it's like, oh, some turtles died versus, oh, everything died, like that's a big difference. And that's what like the probability aspect of
the way that I would frame it is that you assume the last internal link to be true. So suppose in the debate, you were like, tensions between, or like the U.S. and Russia have a good relationship. If you vote affirmative, it'll cause the relationship to become bad, and then you're just like extinction. Then the last internal link I'm going to assume is that the relationship between U.S. and Russia is bad. But if you have a sort of more warranted internal link for why a war would actually occur, that's what I would assume in the impact calendar. But that's maybe a bit, too nuanced and too like randomly specific.
Also, these are policy, so they all terminalize to extinction. In LD, you don't have to terminal, like, not everything has to go to extinction. Like, because you have framework, you can prioritize within. Charlie, stop. Okay. You can prioritize within framework.
Where's Anthony?
You can prioritize within framework things like not extinction of just like saving lives in general, and or you can prioritize like structural violence, like racism, sexism, all of that.
Like I was like in our tournament, I had the militarism impact. And so the main impact that I was going for was not the extinction of all people, even though I claimed that was an impact of militarism. I said that it was more that militarism causes there not to be a value to life or a quality of life. And then I compared that to like actual death, right? And that's the type of debate that you might be having within Lincoln Douglas.
Okay. Any last questions about impact calculus and what we're doing tomorrow?
Wait, if you want, we can do one. Can anyone think of reasons that a Russia-US war would outweigh climate change, that it would be worse?
Yeah.
Go for it, Yash. I'm excited.
Because a nuclear war could cause nuclear winter almost immediately after the nuclear war, which would be worse than the gradual increase of global warming.
Yeah, that's actually amazing. Yeah. Nuclear winter would probably, like if that theory is true, would probably kill like all plants, or not all, like most productive crops on Earth, like really fast. So yeah, that's good. I like that.
Also, something that Yash did and Emily did that they both did really well was direct comparison. Because a lot of times we have a nature to keep things very vague, especially when we're trying to be persuasive. But when you're weighing, you want to keep things very direct. Like Yash said, a nuclear winter causes bad things to happen now. Climate change happens over time, so nuclear winter is worse. So that direct comparison is really important in weighing because it's a comparison.
Also, a gimmicky
the responsibility
thing.
on other generations. That's
Yeah. So that's probably a general reason why extinction is like bad. But wait, Dan, can you repeat what you said? I don't think I heard you.
We can shove the problem onto future generations.
Oh yeah, time frame. Good.
That's why it's clearly superior.
Yeah, that is a good argument, actually.
Yeah, you could be like, future generations will come up with some like new technology that just like solves everything.
CCS, yeah.
But we can't like solve nuke war because we'll all be dead.
Oh yeah, a gimmicky thing, like Sid was saying, you need to explicitly compare. A gimmicky thing that teams do sometimes is they'll just say like, oh, our impact is the most important. And then rather than explaining why it's actually the most important, they'll just say why it's big. And then like those obviously aren't the same thing. But you should also know that within a debate, your burden is not to prove that you are, like your thing is the best thing in the world, that like Trumpian, like we're the best. You just need to prove that like your impact is more important than your opponent's. That requires a lot less argumentative work. And like if you do it properly, it like makes it really easy to win the debate. So yeah.
Also, you should make your weighing very clear because I just remember Anthony, he had a round where his impact was extinction.
Are you talking really?
And the other person's impact was just like a couple 100,000 like lives, which is a lot of lives, but it's not as much as extinction. And he had said like he said that in 1 second, and the other person kept on repeating that number.
I should have won that. I should have won.
And the judge wasn't like a really slow judge. They more just like listen to your general argument. And because he had not like reinforced that, he ended up losing. So like making that weighing very clear and making it a very big point in the round is very important because it is that safety net.
Yeah, I mean, this within policy, I start every rebuttal speech with impact calculus for the impact that I'm most likely to go for within the debate. So whether that's the last rebuttal or the second to last rebuttal within a round. Yeah, like that, like just having an order to your speech, like I'm going to start with, explaining why my impact is more important than theirs. Then I'm going to go to the flow, show why I have access to my impact. Then I'm going to go to their flow, show why their impact is not, like why they don't have access to their impact. That can be pretty logical. If you follow the same structure in multiple speeches, the judge can follow it as well. And that can also be beneficial. Cool.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay. I feel like we went over a lot today, and these are like a lot of the big fundamentals. So taking time, like, if you don't feel confident in these, I would try watching the video. I'll post the link in the Discord when it's uploaded. I would definitely watch the video again, maybe take notes on it, because these are like really big fundamentals that will help you a lot in debate.
Specifically, I recorded a video on offense and defense, which will probably be on like the YouTube, not this YouTube, but another YouTube soon. So when it's up, we can send that to you. All right. Any parting thoughts from our students?
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Yeah, so get ready for the weighing tournament tomorrow. It'll be fun.
It will be fun. We're gonna give you some fun impacts.
Yeah. And like, don't worry. Just have fun with it. We're not especially, if you're just getting into debate, you're just learning how to flow. Just make sure you know what your opponent's arguments are, and you know what your arguments are, and you'll be ahead of like most people when they start debate.
That's true.
Yeah.
Especially for like Emily and Yash, like you guys are starting a lot like younger than Jackson, Rajiv, Anthony, and I started.
Yeah. So
like Yash, especially you, like going into 7th grade, you'll have a basic understanding of debate. So you have like 6 years. You end up continuing debate, so like you will have lots of time, and it will be.
And yeah, a great thing about debate is that debate helps you learn about the world, and the more you learn about the world, the better you are at debate. And so it's this nice positive feedback loop that'll help you over time.
By the way, I won't be here tomorrow. I'll be on my way home.
Okay.
Safe travels.
Yes.
Okay, everybody.
I will end this recording.